We're now ready to shift over to rep strategies. What you want to think about here is, from an athletics perspective, a coaching perspective for sports, is when you're a coach and you're looking for how do your athletes attack the game. There are athletes that just show up and participate, and they really don't think through their role. They really don't think through any strategy. They focus on the tactics. These are typically your athletes that have trouble keeping up with the game as it gets faster. So what we want to do here is, you have professional reps. They're getting paid to sell. So we need to treat them as professionals, and we need to help them slow down the game. And part of slowing down the game so that they can participate well in their career is making sure they actually have a strategy that they're using day to day. They don't have to use it constantly, but they need to have a focus that they're targeting from a strategic perspective. So 99% of our day is tactical as human beings. Strategy forces us to take a step back and look at the bigger playing field and look at the options that are in front of us and which option is best for us. So we'll talk a little bit more as we go through that. So let's talk about rep strategies. So by the end of this lesson, we will have defined different rep strategies that can be used. We will build a rep strategy profile for every rep. That way it will lead into our first conversation with our reps where we discuss the strategy and see if the data that's telling us that the strategy they're following confirms that they're actually following a strategy. Did they fall into it by accident? How can we make it more intentional? And as we are looking at profiling the rep, we're going to be looking for patterns that they follow. Again, the data is going to tell the story. And do the patterns work? So are we seeing a pattern, and are we seeing that that pattern causes success? So it's cause and effect. So again, what story is the data starting to tell us? Because we want to confirm that in our rep conversations that are coming up. So strategies as a concept, as I was saying, most people are not strategic naturally. There can be days you do not exercise your strategic muscles. If you think about what strategy really is, it's at looking at all the options in front of you, there's usually more than one, and choosing which option is the best. Most of us don't do that. We typically go through life as a fire, ready, aim perspective. So anytime you think about how you attack your day or how you attack a problem, do you look at all the options, or do you just immediately go to the tool in your toolbox that's most common to use? This is analogous to when you hear people say, when all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's how most of us go through life in most of the things we run into. But when we take time to look at all the options available to us and really think through how we're attacking something, we feel like we're slowing down sometimes, but a lot of times we will find a better solution and a better way to attack a problem, and that's actually being strategic and then using the tactical tools to actually step through and complete what we're trying to accomplish. So you have to exercise this muscle or it won't get any better. Most of you will be very bad at strategy when you first try using it more, but that's okay. Take the time to learn, because the more strategic you think and then execute tactically, those go hand in hand. If you just have strategy, you're a big idea person who never completes anything. If all you have is tactics, you're just the rat on the wheel that's just spinning constantly. You have to think strategically and then execute tactically. They go hand in hand. So you've got to have both, and you've got to look to start strategically and then execute tactically. And that's what we're looking to see if the rep is doing in this lesson. So let's talk about start with the negative. Let's start with some red flag strategies. So some of you this is a rare type of personality, but you may run into a hit and run rep, that type of strategy. This is your rep who's going to be one and done. They're going to get in, get out. These are the folks that help perpetuate that salespeople are bad. The negative connotations around salespeople, that they're just opportunistic. They're opportunistic. They're looking to sell you something and then run away. They're not looking to invest in a long-term relationship. They just want to sell you something and go. The hit and run rep is not a good strategy. It's going to be very short lived. It's going to take a lot of energy. You're always having to hunt new prospects. You can't go farm your old ones because you've ruined those relationships by ignoring them after the sale. So your hit and run rep needs to, if you're seeing that in the data, you need to question it and see how often they're going back. Why are they not going back and selling to their existing base? Why are they not getting upsells? Why are they not being able to farm? Those are the kind of things you'll see in the data that lead to, do you have a hit and run rep? You don't want to assume you do. You just want to start forming the questions around that strategy. Another one, again, a rare one, if you've got a rep that is new hire but not performing, you really need to be on the lookout for ramp riders. These are the folks that either they have kind of lied to you and there's something on the horizon that they're just trying to kill time for. They needed 3 or 4 months for something else to come along that they were told would be available to them, and they're just doing the training and all the onboarding, and then they're acting like they're doing activity but they're really not, and then they're out the door. If you've got a ramp rider, you need to try to find out about this as soon as possible, and you need to identify within the activity that there's nothing really happening, that these are empty cycles. This again is not something you're going to run into commonly, but it does happen, and you just need to be aware that if you've got a new hire that's doing this, just be on the lookout for a ramp rider. They'll hurt you in terms of just lost cycles. You don't get those months back of activity and things that they could be bringing to the table. Unethical is an obvious red flag. This will not necessarily present as somebody that's just out there being unethical. It's or doing illegal or lies or shady things or forging contracts. It usually won't present like that. The way this starts off is the unethical, the really, really unethical people that are out there usually don't start off that way. They start off by playing in the gray areas, and then they're not coached out of them. And they just continue down a path of least resistance that, well, I didn't get caught, nothing negative happened, there were no consequences, and they just keep going until eventually they are quite evil, for lack of a better term. So you have to watch for unethical behavior. Typically, again, it's going to start in the gray areas where it's not necessarily unethical, but it could be viewed as heading down that path. You want to course correct that rep as soon as you notice that that's happening. And then the anti-qualifier. So this will be the person that you have on your team, if you have them, who can set a lot of appointments. They can get people on the phone, they can get appointments scheduled, but then nothing develops. So in your data, you'll see a lot of prospect to first appointment, and then there's a cliff that everything's falling off of. This can also be hidden in other areas where they have trouble qualifying in the proposal stage. They'll just quote to quote. We had one famous rep who would literally get on the phone talking to prospects after they had met with them and just go through the litany of, can I quote that, can I quote that, can I quote that. He was more successful than it sounds like, but that strategy of can I quote that is not really a qualifier. That's not really what you're trying to get to the bottom of. You're trying to find out, is there something there that I can help you with that your company needs help with that my company can solve, or a user, a consumer needs that your company can solve. If you have those things, that's great, but the anti-qualifier is typically just setting meetings to meet. The yellow flag strategies that will show up, we'll start with our whale hunter. The whale hunter's data will show inconsistent quota performance, usually long cycles of very, very low performance or zero performance, followed by over-accelerated performance. So 0, 0, 0, 1,000% or 200%, whatever the numbers look like. It'll be very inconsistent in the behavior patterns. They're typically not a high activity machine, and that's what causes them to be in the yellow flags. The whale hunters could succeed if they have enough activity to always be bringing in whales. Their normal stance is they so hyper focus on one client until they land it that's the problem. They can't get out of their own way to look at additional prospects while they're in the landing of the prospect they're working on. So they've got to figure out a way to shuffle more or juggle more clients and prospects at once until they come to landing one of them. That's one of the issues you're going to have with a whale hunter. That will almost always run down to where they're just working on one at a time, and that's not going to be good for them or for you. Next up is the farmer. We talked about this in the previous section, but somebody who's pivoted to too much farming too fast. If you've got a hybrid environment where you're a hunter and then a farmer, or you actually take on both roles, they're hunting, they think they get enough business in to cover to turn to a farmer because they're getting a lot of requests from their base of accounts, but they're taking their eye off the ball too soon. And it's a normal human thing to pivot too soon to farming. The requests come in, you feel overwhelmed, it's a lot of activity, but they've got to stay focused on continuing to hunt until they have a sizable enough base. And that's something you have to work on. The company probably has parameters that they're looking at that gives you enough clients, enough diversity in your base of accounts that you can't be hung out to dry by one account exiting. Then there's opportunistic, and this is not necessarily a bad or a yellow flag early on. If you have a newer rep and they're just casting a net far and wide with a lot of activity and they're just taking what comes through the door, yes, that's opportunistic. But they may be trying to find their way into a vertical that they can start focusing and farming and mining within that across multiple customers. And that's okay to be opportunistic early on. Opportunistic is not always a bad thing. But opportunistic can be a bad thing if that's where the rep settles. They realize, hey, they get in the habit of starting out opportunistic and they realize, hey, I'm getting success. And then they think that's the strategy to follow on the long term. And in my view, my opinion, I've seen opportunistic approach as a strategy not work long term. Eventually, the activity levels do not create a good long-term focus. The rep doesn't feel like they just feel like a rat on a wheel. They're not getting to a place where they're being strategic. They're just casting and bringing in, casting and bringing in, and it doesn't feel like they've actually grown and matured in their career as a salesperson. So yellow flag traits, a little bit different than strategies. These typically lead to bad strategies over time. So a check the box rep, somebody who you're watching how they react to their day, and they're not in it. They're just not in the boat paddling as hard as they can to be successful. They check the box. You need this report, I'll do this report, I'll give you the bare minimum. Think of it like in the movie Office Space when it was the pieces of flair. And you needed 37 pieces of flair at a minimum, and somebody's just putting on the 37 pieces of flair. So if they really don't care about the job, they'll put on the bare minimum. And the check the box rep, if in that example of that movie, the waiters they want to hire are the ones that want to be overzealous and put on multiple pieces of flair. So having a minimums kind of goes against who you should be hiring to begin with. If you have the right people hired, you don't have to have a minimum in place, rather you're just going to get the check the box type of people. So you don't want to check the box rep. If you see a check the box rep, you're going to need to spend more time with them on their goals and to see how you get them out of that and get them motivated to want more out of what they're doing, or potentially work them out of the organization if they're just not going to be a long-term provider of better for themselves. The reluctant rep. So typically this goes around call reluctance. And this is somebody who's not willing to prospect enough. And if there's any level of reluctance at the beginning, even if they're having success early on, but you can sense that reluctance, This is something you need to work on as early as possible. Reluctance only gets worse over time. It only leads to problems for the rep, typically around activity, because they're not doing all the things they need to do from an activity perspective, because they're thinking, I'm bothering these prospects. And if they've got that in their head that they're bothering the prospects, they're not thinking about, I want to solve problems for the prospects. And part of doing that is picking up the phone or sending emails, however they go about their prospecting, but it's identifying who needs the services I can provide in a positive way. That's what sales is really all about. And if the rep is reluctant to that, either they don't believe in what they're doing, they don't believe in the company, they don't believe in the product or service, and that causes reluctance. And as soon as they get there, getting them out of that mind space is very difficult, and it usually goes round and round in a spiral until finally you just have to let them go because they can't generate enough activity to keep themselves afloat. So be on the lookout for any kind of reluctance traits that you see. Now this one's a mixed bag. Low aptitude. I've had reps that just matter of factly, they just weren't that smart. But I've had those reps that were super successful and super unsuccessful. So if you have a technical or a very difficult sale in your product set, it's more technical, it's more nuanced, your low aptitude rep may struggle with some of those aspects of the product, just in understanding what it does and how it works and how it operates and how they can get people to understand it, how to communicate that well. This doesn't necessarily mean that they can't figure it out. I've had low aptitude reps that solve this through a number of ways. They can go about it with more activity to where they can find people that they can find more prospects they don't need to explain it to, or they can work their relationship angle, use their resources such as sales support to help explain the more technical aspects, and literally play the dumb card to their advantage. Oh, I don't understand this complicated stuff. That's what I bring my engineer for. They're going to talk you through it. So don't let low aptitude reps concern you about that they can't make it. If they can't make it, they're not using the other tools in their toolbox. They don't have to be the smartest people in the room. They have to know how to get the smart people in the room to talk. They're there to identify the opportunities, and if they can't do that, that's a problem. They're there to build the relationships and get your prospects talking about the needs they have that your company can solve. And if they can't solve, they're able to qualify that out and say, we can't help them, I'll find somebody else that we can help. But don't let low aptitude concern you that somehow that's unovercomable as a sales rep, because it's not. So positive sales rep strategies. We've talked about the negative ones. Let's talk about the positive sales rep strategies. And there's many, but these are the high level ones that will come up the most. So for large accounts, a beachhead strategy of attacking a certain point that a company needs help with. Now, the best way to do the beachhead is to lead with one of your top products. That way your best foot is forward on the first go ahead. Now, that doesn't always work out, let's face it. Sometimes the need that's uncovered in a large account is one of your worst products. Set expectations. Make sure your reps are setting expectations. If it is not one of your strongest products, say, hey, I'm going to sell you this because you're telling me you need this, and this is something we can get in the door with, and nobody else maybe is offering it or offering it the right way. But just understand this isn't what we're strongest at, and I'm gonna handhold it. I'm gonna walk this through, and with a commitment that if we meet expectations and we do a good expectation setting, that in the future you will continue to add businesses or services and products with us because we've proven ourselves to be appropriate and honest in how we've handled your services and products. So those are the things you want to attack with the beachhead. Another one that you might uncover that your reps are using is just vertical focus, where they get really good in a specific industry, whether that's energy, whether that's oil and gas, whether that's manufacturing, whatever they're experts at. They find very quickly reps are very talented in this area. They figure out that the questions that that industry has are the same across every single customer that's in that vertical. And now they become more and more an expert as they get through it, and pretty soon they can start coming to the table when they call these customers or prospects and say, I bet you're having problems here, here, and here because your competitors are. And I've been able to solve this, this, and this. Would you like to talk? And sure enough, they do. I've had reps that have owned all the verticals in a geographic area completely. They've owned an entire industry in an area, had every single customer that represents that particular vertical because they followed this strategy. And it's an easier strategy to follow, but again, they have to be thinking about it and looking for it. And you might find this in the data that they haven't even found yet, that they do have vertical knowledge and expertise that they can leverage for more clients. Another positive rep strategy, not always my favorite, but I've seen it play out well, is the worker. If they're willing to, this is the one where if you're willing to just kill it every day, come in and work as hard as possible, it's very hard to fail in sales. And I'm a true believer in this. I've watched some of the most untalented salespeople work themselves really hard and become successful in sales. I'm not saying that's the way you want to go about it. I believe in working smarter, not harder. But for the folks who are initially struggling to become salespeople, especially if they're newer to sales, this is a way that you can work your way through it. I had a guy one time who would not leave the office until he set 2 appointments every day. And there were times I would be in the office working and I didn't even know he was there. He was in the conference room calling, and he would come down the stairs at 7:15 going, I set my second appointment, got it accomplished. He felt good about it because he had put in the work and he knew he was earning his success. It was the hard way to do it, but he was earning it. And sure enough, he was very successful while he was with me. And then farmer is a percentage of base. For those that are smart enough or are clever enough to figure out the rotation from going, I'm a hunter rep and I'm pivoting to farming slowly over time, that as I get more and more requests, I'm less hunting, but at a pace that's not too fast, because if you pivot over too fast to farming, you don't have enough to protect you in case a customer leaves, and you probably don't have enough to protect you long term. You're going to farm through your entire base and then go, now I've got nothing else to sell, and I've forgotten or gotten out of the habit of hunting, and then that's a hard habit to start back up sometimes. I've had reps who have struggled in the area of starting that back up once they've gotten away from it. So just know that for the ones that are clever enough, this is a good strategy to say, I'm only farming based on the base size that I have. If I've got you help your reps figure out how many customers maybe or how much revenue for customer sizes allows you to pivot 100% to farming, and then you figure out what that means and where you are in that scale today. It's just a math problem. And as you start figuring out how much revenue you or customer numbers or whatever you use in your company to figure out where 100% farming should be okay, you use that and maneuver them very slowly towards being 100% farmer. Now, I've had people who were able to be 100% farmer but loved hunting enough where they would still bring in one a month or one a quarter of new logos, and that's fine too. More activities never frowned upon, but it's something to be cognizant of, because again, the human behavior is to pivot too soon, to farm more than you should be, because it's easy and it's there. It's just a path of least resistance. So in conclusion, you should now be able to assess certain rep strategies that are occurring. I would encourage you on the worksheet that we're going to do here in a minute to add some of your own that you see, if you see a story being told differently in the data you've gathered. And the strategies begin to tell that story of your team, not only of each rep, but who your team is as a whole. Maybe you have a certain number, a higher number of one type of strategy. So that's something you should be looking for. So your action item is by rep, you want to ID each strategy that you see in the data that you've pulled together. And then later in the first rep meeting, you're going to have the questions to confirm, because they may not realize that they're following these strategies. Or you may think you see, for example, a whale hunter, and you talk about it only to find out that that's not what's going on. Something else was happening that made the data look the way it looked. You want to confirm, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Do you agree or disagree that this is a strategy you're following? They may look at you and go, I didn't think I was following a strategy. I was just out there selling. Okay, now you've got something to talk about in trying to prepare them to be a more strategic thinker about how they attack their prospecting base. So your action item is to complete the worksheet. So let's go over so you can see that it's not a difficult worksheet. You've got red flags, yellow flags, and green flags that you want to identify by rep. This is a short worksheet. It's in PDF format if you'd like to print it out and write on it, and it's in Word document down below if you would like to print it out and write on it. Or I'm sorry, if you'd like to use Word to make it electronic and keep it saved in your electronic files, depending on what your preference is, paper or electronic, that's available to you. It's not a big spreadsheet. I want to get you in the habit of starting to complete these worksheets. This will help you be prepared when you meet with the rep, where you can say, here's what the data is telling me. Help me understand if you believe this is who you really are. And they may have both red, yellow, and green, or all three, yellow, red, and green flags in the strategies that you're seeing in the data. Put that down and be sure to ask to clarify around it.